Welcome to If Prices Could Talk, the podcast where we dive into the art and science of pricing, sales, and negotiation. I'm your host, Tracy Dent. Join me as we explore strategies and current events shaping the future of pricing power in B2B, featuring insights from industry leaders and subject matter experts. Let's jump into today's conversation. Let's get started. MG, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
On. So you're
Thanks so much.
You're in London. You're in
I'm in
downtown
London.
London, where, I should have asked you this earlier. What part of London are you in?
So at this moment, I'm in a office in Shoreditch, London, which is where
Okay.
all the cool tech kids hang out. They call it the mini Silicon Roundabout.
Cool.
And I live in Southwest London.
Okay. All right. Awesome. And then Jeet's in New York.
The
We almost had like a pretty wide spread of geography there for a minute because Jeet's usually on the West Coast-ish.
Yeah,
You're in New
Phoenix,
York
right?
now.
Yeah.
no,
Is that considered the West Coast? I guess not.
it's Southwest
Yeah.
technically,
Questionable.
but anything west of New York is kind of West Coast.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go. Well, the other thing, so we've been kind of in the same circles for a long time, MG, but we hadn't met. We got to do a little shout out to Matt Nags from Zilliant for introducing us a couple months ago.
For
Yeah.
sure.
It's like the pricing world is so small, but there's always new people to meet who have been around and, into value and there's so much that we could talk about on the podcast. So shout out to Matt for setting this up. I think this will be a good conversation.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Well done to him on connecting us.
That's awesome. Well, as our starting point, MG, do you want to tell us a little bit about your background just for people that aren't familiar with you and Cuvama? Let's jump off there.
Sure. So I have spent last 20 plus years now in B2B go-to-market teams. I would say the intersection of pricing and value, right? So, and that's been the consistent theme across small size startups, larger established companies, consulting, but it's always been around pricing and value. And which is why I think we all have like a few hundred connections in common.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And with Cuvama, and there's so many things to talk about this with Cuvama because there's like value-based pricing, value-based selling, and then
Mm,
the ways in which people kind of seek support. Because I was thinking, for people that say we do value-based selling, like
mm,
what does that mean? And then especially when people come to you for help, they'll say, we've been on this value-based selling journey, and they're seeing certain problems. So can you tell us a little bit about that? Like, where do people fall short? Why do they have issues with that?
there is a perception that value equals ROI, and value selling is how do we build a business case or an ROI, and that's the goal that a lot of companies have in mind when they talk about value selling. I think where you talk about the problems with that, and what I hear so much from sellers today is it's like, yeah, you know what? We were selling this deal, we wanted to do an ROI, but then the client, they didn't want it. They said they've got their own business case. We couldn't get them to give us any numbers. I was like, yeah,
Mm,
okay. And I think where a lot of companies they're falling into the trap of let's use this ROI to justify a high price. And what's happening is it feels unnatural. It feels like a means to an end versus you talk to the purists who talk about what does it really mean to sell on value? And they will all say that value should be introduced early on in the sales cycle. It should start with doing discovery better. And I think what's happened in the last 15 years, when there was the shift from on-premise to SaaS, there was a bit of, right, we need to actually care about how our customers are getting value. Can we measure it? We're going to come up for renewal in a few years. Okay, value needs to be front and center at that renewal conversation. How do we have that conversation if we haven't figured out where they're really going to get value in the first place? And there's movement almost where I think the stats are in 2015 on LinkedIn, you could find 5,000 professionals with value in their title. And it would be value consultant or value advisor or business value engineer. And they all kind of did the same thing. Smart McKinsey consultants, they would come up with a credible, right, here are the challenges that you've got, here's the outcomes, poof. And here's your amazing ROI. Now, here's why we can, sell you this 5-year contract at 7-figure ACV. And from 2015 to 2020, that number went up from 5,000 to over 50,000. All right, this is how organizations are solving the value selling problem is let's get expensive consultants, let's have them build these ROI stories, but that was never going to be a scalable solution. It wasn't going to be scalable to have these consultants in the room for every deal. That's where technology started coming into the picture. And again, with the technology, a lot of it was very focused on how do we do all the maths the right way? How do we quantify ROI? And really smart people putting a lot of complex formula and maths together to come up with your ROI is going to be 17.63%. But no one really buys like that. No one's buying whether ROI is 15x or 20x or anywhere in between. It's about that story. And I think there's been a bit of correction in the last 5 years. So that number of 50,000 value engineers has come back down, probably close to the 5,000 that was in 2015. And I think that's the market just calibrating to where things are. So long-winded way of just, I guess, describing the evolution in value selling, what it means. And it feels like, okay, the pendulum has swung back to, you know what? How do we do discovery right? Let's start the value conversation there.
MG, I'm curious. One of the things that we run into with our clients at times is their perception of value is, hey, if I give you from $100 to $80, I just gave you $20 of value. If I give you an extra feature to turn on, I gave you value. So that's very sort of, it's something that I'm doing for you that is doing the value, is giving you the value. And it's very sort of one-sided. So when obviously for us, we do value-based pricing and selling, and we look at it from the other side, which is how is the client or the customer, our client's customers, how are they generating value for them, right? How's our client generating value for their customers? So we have this sort of perception sometimes that we have to fight, especially with salespeople, because they feel like discounting is giving value to customers. They feel like, adding more, commercial terms, better commercial terms for the client, that's straight out value that, you don't have to quantify, you're just giving value. So how often do you have to kind of fight even the basics of explaining how you're defining value and how you're capturing value or enabling value to be used in the sales process?
So we have a very simple line, which is value comes from solving customers' challenges, not from numbers in a spreadsheet. So if you're not solving a customer's problem or pain point, there's no value.
I like that. And then what about, from a complexity perspective, there's obviously some things you can quantify and some things are a little bit more difficult to quantify. How do you handle sort of that dichotomy?
Yeah, I think a mistake we see often is companies trying to shoehorn every kind of benefit into dollars and cents. And some of the formulas that they come up with to try and tell a story, it ends up just damaging a lot of credibility. So we like to stay away from talking about ROI, and we like to use the phrase value story. And every value story should have 3 components. It should have some outcomes that are monetized in dollars and cents, some that might just be quantified with a range, and we're like, hey, you know what, this is kind of like a ballpark range of benefits that you could expect. We don't even need to put a dollar number on it. And some can be purely strategic benefits. So making sure that every single deal has a mix of these three, that's our approach to, again, giving the, and okay, you want to make this easy to build, right?
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, the worst mistake you can make in building a business case or a value case is it's an outside-in business case. Our view is this needs to be the customer's business case. They need to own it. They need to build it. You just need to enable them to build it. So what we see as best practice is a seller will have the buyer actually collaborate on the business case. They share a record, they give them some guardrails, and then as a seller, you're starting to see who's engaging, how much are they engaging. Those are good buying signals. So I guess to summarize, absolutely, value needs to have components that are non-monetized. And second key takeaway is this needs to be authored and the customer's fingerprints need to be all over their value story, not the seller's. The less the seller gets involved, the better.
Yeah. I'm curious, one of the things that, for us, we use value as a mechanism to resonate with different buying centers within the same deal or within the same transaction environment, right? You can have different types of buyers. You have sort of procurement, let's say, tends to be more of the price type of buyer. You've got the user that's actually going to use the product or service. That's going to be a little bit different than maybe somebody that is releasing the budget dollars. They own the budget and they're going to make a decision. So all of them are going to have a different, slightly different approach to what's important for them, what's needed for them to buy into the entire buying process. So how do you think about the value story and how the value story should have nuances based on who you're speaking with, who you're selling to at that moment in time?
Absolutely. And spare a thought for the salesperson.
Right.
Everybody loves to bash on salespeople for not doing their homework or being lazy and jumping into demo mode.
No one says salespeople are lazy. Come on.
Think about their world where they've got crazy amount of collateral, case studies, assets sitting in all these libraries. Now, as you mentioned, they're selling to 5, 6, 8. The number of personas they're selling into is continuing to go up.
That's right.
The number of products that they're selling keeps going up. Super fast to create product now. And you look at the combinatorial explosion of, okay, you're expecting me to lead with a point of view and I need to be credible and I need to be confident and I need to speak the customer's language. I need to show up with the right customer story. How am I going to do all of that? I need to not sound generic all the time. And to this point exactly of even within a buying committee, the size of which Gartner talks about how it's gone from 5 to 8 to 10 and that number still keeps going up. How am I as a seller going to construct that value story? And let's just say those 5 key stakeholders, they all have different pain points. The solution might be addressing pain points that stakeholder number 3 doesn't care about at all, but it's hugely important for stakeholder number 5. Okay. And this is where we believe that technology can really help. Right? How do you surface the right information to the salesperson based on the person that they're meeting, based on the industry that they're selling into, based on the size and the attributes of that specific company, so that they can be targeted and they can lead with that challenger point of view and they can do those good behaviors. So we see technology helping with that. And then ultimately, in terms of building the value story, this is when we, what we saw as a key missing piece. Salespeople like to use the phrase hunting license. It's like, all right, I know that I've got these 2 or 3 stakeholders. I need to bring them on side. I know they're going to be part of the buying committee. I'm asking them for time. I'm not getting any time. What do I do? Sharing a value hypothesis or sharing a value story which says, hey, we talked about this value story with these three other stakeholders, before we want to make sure that we've got assumption number 4 and 6. They feel, do they pass the sniff test? That hunting license and getting them to feed into that record of how the solution is going to deliver value, we see that as a clever way to accelerate consensus.
Yeah, that's great. Speaking of salespeople, since you brought up salespeople, I'm actually a big believer that we don't give enough tools for sales to be successful in the sales process. It's people usually point to CRM, and CRM is such a generic, not to disparage CRM companies, because I think it's a wonderful tool if you can make it your own and use it correctly. So there's nothing wrong with that. It's such a genericized tool that it's been kind of you don't know what to do with it. It's just too much for salespeople oftentimes, and it creates extra work, and they kind of stay away from it. So using CRM as an example, though, which is, hey, put in your losses of accounts and why. Usually that's the most dirty field on CRM, is the loss field. You obviously know the win through your transactions, and that's okay. So getting salespeople to do something that's best practice over the course of time sometimes have been challenging. So even if you say, hey, let's bring up the value story as early as possible in the buying cycle, which I totally agree with you. That's exactly where it needs to be at. At the point of negotiation, it's too late. That's when you're dealing with commercial terms. No one's going to care about value at that point, right? It has to be in the beginning. How do we solve the problem of salespeople not wanting to have value conversations with customers because they feel like, hey, it's either too early, or hey, I don't want to ask those difficult questions like, hey, it's going to save, this software will save you, 20% of your staff. They can go do other things. You're going to get that productivity. And they don't want to have that kind of a conversation. How do you deal with that situation?
Yeah, and what we're seeing today is there's been a proliferation of sales tools all designed to help the salesperson.
Yeah.
A lot of it is around automation. But I think the point that you're picking up on is a lot of being able to effectively have these conversations in the discovery stage of the sales cycle. That really does boil down to salesperson curiosity. You think about the homework that a salesperson needs to do to be credible, be confident, not waste buyers' time. What we're seeing a lot of companies doing is implementing some sort of value selling methodology. And there's a bit of an alphabet soup going on right now, right? There's medic. They realize that, okay, medic doesn't quite have enough letters in it, so let's put in a couple of P's in there. Now it's medpic. There's spin, there's spiced, there's all of these methodologies, these frameworks really, that they're all trying to do the same thing. They're all trying to uncover pain, implicate pain, link it to outcomes. Right? And you can talk about positive consequences and negative consequences, and there's these frameworks, right? This is not new. This has been around for 30, 35 years, right? And to link it to the CRM point you brought up, it's like, okay, now you look at Salesforce, and hey, guess what? You need to fill in your medic and medpic and the M1s and the N2s and the Is, and let's make it all there. But this has become more of a checklist and not a conversation.
That's right. That's right.
There's checklists, and then there's also think about especially in the last 12 months or so, the amount of pressure to automate and quote unquote use AI for sales, do more with less.
Yeah.
The expectation on an already pressurized system for most sellers in B2B SaaS who are like, you got to hit quota. Competition is intense. There's a lot of different factors as a seller that people are navigating. And I think AI is such a big one because there's what's really working with using AI. And then there's also just the general environment that people are navigating with how people are speaking about AI. And I think those two things are both equally intense for sellers right now. And so I think we should talk about AI a little bit because I think there's what's working in how people are getting more efficient and effective with leaning on AI features in their own sales processes. and how the expectation for AI within your features is changing how people are getting differentiated in their
Yeah,
product itself. So where
yeah,
do you want to start with that?
yeah. So very topical. We ran two events in the last 2 months, one in New York and one in London, identical format with 30 B2B software CROs, go-to-market leaders. And the question we asked is, where is AI really helping your sales teams today? Where is it not hurting? Where is it not helping? Where might it even be hurting? Let's talk about war stories. And if you had a magic wand, what would AI really be doing? Because there's also on one end of the spectrum, it's like, hey, are we all going to move to a world where there's buying agents and there's selling agents and they're talking to each other and we don't even need people anymore? And you
Mm.
hear those points of view as well. Right? So the key themes that came up in terms of where AI is helping and where it's being used today is, all right, that to the point Jeet you brought up earlier, that persona level personalization, being able to synthesize a whole lot of material. What's this person said in this recent piece of news? Which execs are talking about what? The 10K reports, which nobody ever reads, but often have a wealth of hidden nuggets in there. All right,
Yeah.
so how do you pull together stuff from those 10K reports, link it with news, link it with industry trends, and arm your seller with, boom, here's a credible point of view I can lead with. Hang on, yes, let's do some of those good selling behaviors. Let's now lead with that point of view. Let's uncover the pain. So we see companies starting to do that and get better at, I think in one word, AI is very good at providing back a comprehensive looking output, right? And you see, and it's like, oh wow, this is pretty good. Like, look what I just got. I just typed in a few prompts and boom. Okay, how much of that is really generic? How can you really get to like what are you actually trying to say? And uh, I think the difference between 6 months ago and now is now you're starting to see, all right, companies focusing on specializing in particular workflows and the workflows for salespeople, helping them prepare for a call. Call recording has been around for a while now, and everybody has got Gong or some other call recording software. So the summary and synthesis coming
Get
out of
those
that,
transcripts.
yeah,
Yeah.
those transcripts. And I know there's a lot of mixed feelings about those transcripts, but I think if you look at the evolution, there's those transcripts to now, okay, how can you help prepare for a call? Let's extrapolate on that. Let's take it to, all right, now that I've had the call, how can I layer in those call recording transcripts to what I know about the customer? How can you make this into a living value story? I think there's a lot going on there. And then again, the balance point of view is, hey, guess what? I mean, there were probably way more war stories that came out in these two breakfasts. It was a bit like therapy, CROs talking about crazy stuff that's happened, right? And all of a sudden, we now have an abundance of amateur prompt engineers who all think they're experts and are generating these super wordy, unstructured outputs that all sound the same, right? And all sellers from all vendors, they're all sounding the same. And forget about like hallucinations and stale data. And then did AI write this? And now sellers are getting creative too. They're deliberately sprinkling in some typos in their emails so that it doesn't look like AI has generated it, right?
Don't use the M dash, and then they're like, "Ha, got it."
Exactly. And I think to take that a step further, what you're also seeing is a lot of sellers are pitching too soon. They're like, hey, guess what? I've got all the answers now. AI has just told me everything I need to know. Let's jump into the pitch, right? And that, to some extent, it's killing a bit of the curiosity. It's killing okay, let's get deeper. Let's really understand. So a lot of war stories, but at the same time, a lot of efficiency in terms of, I think, the research for a call, the preparation for a call, leading with that personalized point of view. So yeah, we're in exciting times.
I'm curious, with AI, I agree with you, directionally speaking. We're so early in its life. We forget how new this is. And of course, these things are going to happen where it's just like a brain dump of all these different things. And there's misuse of it. There's, the misrepresentation of data and information, all sorts of stuff. But I kind of chalk it up to this is the early days of a incredible tool that's going to reshape how we do everything in our lives, essentially, right? So I'm good with that part. What's interesting to me is if I go back to what you were talking about, MG, about all these different sales tools that might be out there, and I use the
Mm,
example of CRM.
mm,
It seems like one of the things that we always have a hard time doing is getting salespeople to follow best practices.
mm,
It's difficult, especially as your sales team grows to, 500 people, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. It's difficult to standardize, very difficult.
mm,
People usually don't do it. So then you have the carrot or the stick to force people to do something. Then on the other side of the coin, you have this concept or notion of people buy from people.
mm,
You have to create that connection. You have to create that credibility that comes from this human to human interaction. Can AI help with that? Can AI facilitate that? Of course it can. The smarter I am about your organization, your life, your situation, the easier it is for me to connect with you. But the key is the connection. Right? And so if I have those two dichotomies of overuse of tools and lack of standardization because human behaviors don't want to be put into a standard 10-step sales process. And then I've got the world that is sometimes missing that human connection because we're
mm,
so forced to kind of be sort of repetitive in how we're
mm.
using AI, how we're using, getting ready for a sales call, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
I feel like there's something that's there in the middle, almost like a world of personalization where salespeople, I'm making this up, but salespeople get a credit of $200 a month and they get to choose whatever tool that they want to use that's best for them in how they connect with their customer base. And then maybe you have 75 different tools, 100 different tools, and you get to Frankenstein tools for yourself that resonates with you and makes you use it. Because you're right, all of these tools are basically following the same process, the same 3-4 process of how do you influence an influencer, how do you get the right business story, how do you make it relative to them so it's important and it resonates with them, how do you make them the hero of this transaction. All of those things are nothing new. That's been there for the 30 years I've been working for. It's not changed. How we skin the cat has changed because there's all these other tools and resources at fingertips. So the question for me is, yes, these tools exist. Yes, these tools are good in its own way, but is it truly scalable within an organization when you have the human sort of pushback that you get? And that's usually the deal killer oftentimes, because somebody from the VP of sales looks down and goes, my guys are not all of them are going to use it. Only certain people are going to use it. And then all of a sudden the use case starts getting smaller and smaller. And you instead, will there be a world where salespeople get a $200 a month credit and they get to use it on whatever they want because it's outcome driven rather than process or tool driven?
Yeah. Wow, so much to unpack there. I guess first up, just on the tools front, you want to split it out into which are the tools for sales management and which are the tools for salespeople, right? And that's a very interesting debate as well. Like, okay, is a call recording software, is that helping the salesperson or sales management? Which one really likes it more? If you ask a salesperson, where do I spend my $200? I don't think they're necessarily going to spend it on CRM and call recording software.
That's right. That's right. That's exactly right. So that, because you would
They will say,
assume,
I'm going to pay you $200, so I don't need to use CRM
yeah.
or call recording software.
But I think there's probably, if you did this study, right? My guess is if you did this study, you'd probably have 80% of salespeople that go, I'm going to take the 200 and put it in my pocket. That's what I'm going to do first, right? Then they're going to see cohorts of sales peers that are going to perform better and do better. Then there's going to be a moment of, oh crap, I'm behind. What are you guys using? What are you doing? So there's a little bit of copycat that'll happen. And then they're going to start realizing, wow, I'm getting some efficiency. I'm getting some wins. And I wish I could change that and change this or whatever it is. And then you're going to start seeing the benefit. But that journey could be a year, 2 years, or whatever. This is not a quick, obviously. It's almost like self-realization, of what they want and need to make them perform the best. And that takes time. And so you're 100% right that a lot of these folks, it's not going to be out of the gate. I know exactly what I want, and here's how I'm going to curate 15 different tools onto my desktop.
Yeah, I mean, when we go and speak to a B2B software company, first thing they'll tell you is, hey, we've got these 15 tools for salespeople, and I know they don't even use more than half of them.
That's right.
So before you try and come and sell us something new, tell me the 5 pieces I can get rid of.
Yeah.
All right, right? No one's using them.
That becomes your business case.
Well, and then the question becomes, okay, are these tools for them or are these tools for you?
Yeah.
My point of view is if you can genuinely save a salesperson time, right? I mean, time is ultimately their currency. They've got their book of business, they've got their patch of accounts. Are you really going to save them time? Filling in CRM fields is not saving them time. Preparing or researching big enterprise account, the ones who are going to do it well, if you can bring that time down to minutes instead of hours, then you start to see that adoption. And I feel like a lot of the new generation of sales tools, a lot of them are starting with a more user-led growth approach, right? Then they're not selling into organizations. They're like, okay, sales, you know what? You can try this out for free. Try it out for free. When your manager wants to integrate with CRM, that's when we can start talking about commercials. But go on, get value from it, and that's kind of the world that we're in some ways, because everybody talks. It's so easy to build product now. It was easy 5 years ago. Now with AI, everyone and their grandma can come up with a new piece of tech in a couple of hours. Okay, just because you're giving someone something high value and it's free, they still won't use it.
Yeah.
Right? So how do you cut through all of that noise? And it has to be love at first click, saves me so much time, and then and only then might you have a chance to make a business case. So there is a big battle for tech providers right now to compete in this crazy proliferation. But to go back to another point that you made, Jeet, and I think this is one I feel very strongly about, is the human connection, right? The human connection. And you can still argue that decisions are made based on trust, and trust is going to be built with a human and not an AI machine. And one of the best quotes I heard was, I wish when you talk about all these co-pilots, right? Co-pilot and everyone, there's a new sales co-pilot popping up every day. And when can the co-pilot tell you to get off your screen, get off your ass and go and see the customer in person and have that face-to-face real conversation, or have lunch with them or whatever, right? Because there's a lot of that is missing, right? And another interesting insight that came out of one of these CRO roundtables that we had was, if you look at the spectrum of sales, of enterprise salespeople, the ones who are selling big deals, 200K plus, where, all right, you need to link problems to solutions. There needs to be some mental horsepower that is coming up with, what is the story? Why are you going to spend 200K on this piece of tech? On one end of the spectrum, you've got the problem solver. They look at sales as, this is a set of problems to be solved. And on the other end of the spectrum, you've got the relationship builder. You know what? Let me bring in my smart pre-sales guy to figure the stuff out. You know, I've shown them a demo. They kind of seemed interested. Now let's just bring in all the help we can get and get this deal over the line. What's funny, in the last 12, 24 months, we're seeing a lot of these relationship builders getting supercharged. right? Because a lot of work that has been done by the problem solver, quite a lot of that can now be you can just do it a lot more efficiently. It's like,
Yeah.
hang on, now I can not just show up to dinner or have this engaging meeting, but I can actually say a lot of smart stuff too, right? And bridging that gap. So it's helping the smooth talking salesperson, the more trust relationship based seller to some extent, more than the, all right, I'm going to figure this out. Like it's a set of problems to be solved.
That's great. Maybe Tracy, we can pivot a little bit and we can talk a little bit about the value quantification piece of it. We touched on it in the beginning.
Yeah.
Maybe we can kind of go down that path a bit. What do
You know what I thought would be fun is talk about some really obscure examples of when
That's
sellers
a
are
good
able
idea.
to quantify value. Because I think there's some obvious ones, and clearly, like saving time and making more money for the customer are going to be the priorities. But the ways in which you tell that story, I think we've seen some really cool examples on our end, MG, and I'm sure you have too, of how have people gotten really creative at figuring that out, especially when it's like, you're really helping the other person. I think you made a really good point in the beginning of the conversation of like, I think value can get kind of weaponized to
Mm,
be used to ask
mm,
for a higher price point versus what are the ways that sellers can get really creative to help that person forward their value to their customers. So I think that would be fun. Like let's talk about some examples of value quantification that made you guys think, you know?
yeah, so this is like one of my personal favorite pricing and value anecdotes that doesn't fully answer your question, but it's a story about a car wash. A
Love
car
it.
wash, and you think about like, okay, it doesn't get more commoditized than a car wash, and maybe you can talk about this different trimming and this different wax, but at the end of the day, it's like, all right, where's the value sell really happening over there? And this is MG 15 years ago, and I just bought this sporty sedan and very vain in showing it off and getting it cleaned every other week. And I would go to the same car wash guy. His name was Marchek, 10 pounds to get the car wash. I was like, all right, did that for a couple of years, and life happened and kids happened, and all of a sudden I've had to part ways tearfully with my sporty sedan and get a good old SUV. And I go to Maciek, the same Polish car wash guy, and the price is 20 pounds. I was like, oh, hang on. There's not a big difference in size. Why am I paying double? And Maciek tells me, now Maciek has not gone to business school. He's not learned about value selling, but his framing is beautiful. He says, MG, it's not about the size of the car. You're right. This is not double the size. But he said, usually in this neighborhood, when a customer comes in with the SUV, they normally have kids and car seats at the back. And that's a lot of more work for us. And I look back in the car seats, and there is everything ranging from wrappers to crumbs to something that even looks like a piece of fatty bacon curled up there. I was like, suddenly that 20 pounds seems like a really good deal.
You're like, I'm not
Right?
doing it. Right.
Yeah, and it's just like, okay, this is a value sell, right? This is like value sell. And
Yeah.
Maciek was spot on, but his framing of normally when customers like you, and this is like leading with that point of view, leading with something that forced me to think, makes me look in my backseat. So you take this to beyond car wash and beyond software, and so much of it, right? So much of it just keeps coming down to, are you solving the customer's challenges? What are their pains? Sometimes they don't. They, I didn't even pay enough attention to those crumbs in the back of the
Yeah,
car
yeah,
seat.
your whole thing changed. That's
But
right.
it was an unconsidered need. It was an unconsidered pain. It's like, hang on, this is gross, right? This is like germs, my base. So I think that point about value being weaponized, it's like, no, value comes from solving customer challenges. That's it. Full stop.
Yeah.
It's for me, one of my first projects that we had was with Johnson and Johnson, and Johnson and Johnson had a harmonic scalpel, which basically you could cut for operations. You can cut, and it cauterizes at the same time. So what it does is it heals you faster as a patient, and you have better recovery because the cut is cleaner essentially, and it's just better. So they had us like price, how much should we price for this? And it was just fascinating because the value is in recovery faster, human life recovery faster. It's in bed turns for hospitals. So that's a good measurable thing to do. But it touches on human life. So how do you quantify the value of human life? Should
Wow.
you quantify the value of human life? And that's where it got really interesting for me. When you talk about value, and as a young consultant, I think that was one of the aha moments that said you really don't need to quantify everything and anything, because there are some things that will resonate. If a physician's evaluating this tool, let's say it was new to the market, now it's 25 years old, whatever it is. If it's new to the market and you're talking to a physician and you talk to them about, hey, it cuts and cauterizes at the same time, I think the physician has a pretty good idea of the quality of life for that patient, that you don't need to quantify. And I think that's the difference between an ROI tool and a value communication tool, because the ROI tool you need to quantify because your pricing is based off of the return, so it has to be quantified. In value, that's why Tom Nagel and Reed Holden didn't use ROI when we did value quantification, because there doesn't need to be quantified. Not everything needs to be quantified. Value is really meant to influence purchase, to help you understand the value of the solution, so it helps you buy, so you can understand and comprehend what's important and how you're going to benefit from it. So it's better for the sales process. So, in that situation, it was a big aha for me that said, hey, even though we try to quantify as many things as possible because it's important, it resonates with the buying agents that are out there, but not everything needs to be quantified to have an impact in the buying process.
Totally. Yeah, I had an aha moment similar when I was part of this extended sales team. I was the expensive value consultant who need to come up with this ROI, and I had flown from London to San Francisco, big presentation, boardroom, executive buyer sitting in the room, and I was like raring to go and show this slide with the beautiful waterfall and all the dollars and cents we were going to save them. And he looked at me and he said, MG, if every single vendor like you who walks through these doors actually delivers on this financial promise, guess what? My P&L will have like zero cost next year. There's just no maths to make this work. And he said, you haven't understood our challenges. You haven't understood what we care about, right? And we didn't win that deal, but that stuck with me, right? There's value not equal to ROI. We actually have that written up in our office, right?
Oh, that's great.
I like that.
No, I like that. That's pretty good. That's great.
I really like that. All right, cool. Last question, just we have a few minutes left. Something that if it's like a B2B SaaS CEO listening to this, something to look out for in the second half of this year. Doesn't have to be necessarily a bad thing, just either like a prediction of what you think is on the horizon or something that's emerging that sounds promising, just anything as you look ahead at the next couple months to kind of keep your eyes on.
Well, looking ahead, and AI needs to be part of the conversation. And so what are we seeing? think the first half of the year, we saw a lot of come and use my AI tool and look at all the wonderful things that it'll do and have a play and for go-to-market teams specifically, there seems to be a bit of, okay, we went a bit too far. Yes, AI has a lot of power, but what I see in the next 6 months is much more of this, what people are starting to call an FDE, or a forward deployed engineer, where yes, there is an AI which has all these superpowers, but there needs to be a human that can make sure that the models that are feeding the AI have a sanity check. The outputs that are coming out, okay, are they generic? Are they missing important pieces? And to harness the power of a go-to-market engine that is powered completely by AI, getting that human in the loop. So I'm seeing a bit of moving back from only AI to human in the loop, and seeing companies really starting to take advantage in their marketing, in their sales, in their overall go-to-market strategies.
Awesome. Jeet?
In the second half, my not so profound guess is we're going to see smaller companies that are not as big and established as a $300-400 million company. We're going to see smaller companies leap forward and take over some of that market share. Those little ankle biters that we didn't pay any attention to because those competitors don't really matter, all of a sudden are going to be major competitors because they're going to gain those efficiencies, because they're going to be taking those risks. And the $300-400 million company is not going to take those risks because that's not part of their DNA, and they're going to be left behind over time.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's a tsunami, right? We talk about the AI tsunami is going to come, right? And it's coming. And guess what? It's not just tech. I mean, when was the last time you heard about a mining unicorn? I mean, you talk about old school industries. This mining unicorn in Berkeley, California, okay, they sucked in survey records in Zaire or Congo in Africa, and it's like suddenly triangulated information, satellite. It's like, boom, the largest untapped copper reserve ever found. Right? It's like, all right, here's a mining unicorn. This is coming, people. This is coming.
Yeah.
I mean,
Pretty exciting.
There's an article I think I saw yesterday or the day before. I can't remember where it was, but Tesla's building a center, an AI center, that's going to be larger than the size of Manhattan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense.
All the time.
Awesome.
This is great. Thank you, MG. It's great to hang some time together.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you joining us.
Likewise, thanks both, and yeah, let me know if there's anything I can do to help you guys. And enjoy your trip to Norway, Tracy.
Thank you. All right, we'll see you soon.
Thank
Cheers,
you.
bye.
Bye.
See you.